Oh, great. It's so good to be with you. My goodness, what a vibrant group. We just walked in the room and I could just feel it. Whoa. So I said, oh, I got it. You're entrepreneurs. So I know about that auric field that goes around the head of any entrepreneur because you exist on imagination. I mean, that's what fuels you. It's what gives you your elan vital. So I could feel it when I walked in the room. And I did hear from Sean that you entertained George W. Bush last night, and that, I'm so glad you got to know this man. We have known George and Laura for many years, and at the Dallas Institute they would come. Laura studied with us. George came when we, he didn't study with us. He makes no bones about that, does he? In fact, the other night we were with them when they were honored at SMU at the Peace Award, and he gave this story. He may have said this last night, I don't know. He said, he said, we left Washington and we got down to Crawford, and he said, I flopped down on the sofa. Did he tell you this story? I just loved it. And he said, I thought, whoa. And then Laura said, George, time to do the dishes. So, but that is so typical, and a real treat for all of you, I know, to be with him. Now, your topic is to think big. So I'm really grateful to be invited to ask you to think as big as you can possibly think with me about what makes a great city. And I understand that there are those who are here from cities all over the United States. San Francisco, raise your hand. San Francisco, LA, LA here, Denver, Detroit. Who else do we have? Seattle. All right, I got that one. Okay. Dallas, Texas is poised right now to be one of the greatest 21st century cities on the planet. And I say this unabashedly, but also knowing that we have enormous hubris about what we're trying to do. But I want you to think with me, since you have that ability as an entrepreneur, to imagine what it is that's different about a 21st century city from a 20th century city. We in Dallas live in a very good 20th century city, and most of you know what I mean. We have, everything in the 20th century. We built our cities to get somewhere very quickly, fast food, big highways, shopping centers, in and out quickly, so on, and suburbs. 21st century city is 180 degrees different from that. A 21st century city is going to allow us to remember what it means to be a human being again, to get out of the car, to get on a bike path, to get on a trail and walk or jog, to ride a horse, trails and sidewalks for baby carriages and for wheelchairs, but mainly an outdoor lifestyle and an ability, lots of parks, an ability to get once again with nature and use the concrete for what it's needed for, but appreciate nature once again. That's what we're trying to do in this Trinity project. I'm going to run you through, where's my clicker? Do I have one up here? Is this, do you know? Can I control the slides? Yes, I can. But I need to know how, because this is not it, and this is my pointer. I can point. Tierney, you may need to go up there and help me out here. Oh, the green arrow. Thank you. That's all I need to know. All right, I got it. Okay. Here we go. This is the project. Now, look at this map and realize that in Dallas, Texas, we have a 20-mile swath of nature running through the very center of our city. Just look at this. We have in Dallas the possibility to turn this 20-mile swath of nature into a recreational area for Dallas. And I like to start with this image because most of you have been to our Performing Arts Center. And so now you have a relationship with it and an orientation. Most of you, I imagine, have not been down to the Trinity River. Has anyone been down the Trinity on a canoe or a kayak? Few, I see. So that's another thing as a business group you could do, Sean and others who are running this organization, because you really can't believe you're in Dallas, Texas when you get on the river. It's actually an exciting experience. This is a very interesting map here, a photo illustration, because, you know, I don't know that you can see, you can't see this on the screen. Here is the Dallas Performing Arts Center, and the Performing Arts Center next to Woodall Rogers. You go down Woodall Rogers, you'll see the deck park there in the center. And does this have a light on it? Maybe it does, no. And then on to the river, and in the background you see the arches of the Margaret McDermott Bridge. We are building the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge right now. I'll show you images of that in just a moment. So I like to start with the Performing Arts Center because this didn't exist even a year ago, but it didn't exist certainly 20 years ago when we started imagining the Center for Performing Arts. In fact, my husband, who is with Strasburg and Price, and I noticed that Strasburg is one of your sponsors, when we did the Below Mansion, which is the home of the lawyers in Dallas, it was a very rundown part of town, and we had to hire guards to take us from our car over to the Below Mansion. Now, that's one example of how things change when you have a vision and when you start working on that vision, then pretty soon you're living it. Thank you, my laser pointer. There we go. All right. So these just are very quick images of what happens when you build something and people come. This is that little reflecting pond in the Center for Performing Arts, and they didn't even mean it to be a reflecting pond. It was for the names of the donors, but the kids found it immediately. It's only 1 inch of water. Imagine what these kids are going to do when they have 2 downtown lakes and a promenade by the side of the lake. So let's go now to the river. And the river project is divided into 3 areas. This huge black area is the Great Trinity Forest. It's 6,000 acres. We have a 6,000-acre hardwood forest in the very center of our city, and most people in Dallas have no idea that it's there. In the very center is what we call the Trinity Lakes area. This is downtown, and we're just right here on Woodall Rogers, and the 2 downtown lakes, and this Trinity corridor. The Trinity Fields is the west end of the corridor. Now, this image gives you a sense of how big this project is. It's a $2.5 billion project. It's the largest public works project in the country now, and this is downtown Dallas over here. So that just gives you one sense of the size that we're working with. I'm going to run through these images quite quickly so that you see what our dreams are and what we have in mind. We're building 2 downtown lakes. This would be the first lake with a taxi that takes us from the downtown side across to the island. And then we're moving the river over to the Oak Cliff side. The Oak Cliff side has a levee. People from Oak Cliff can just walk over the levee and get into this side, into the corridor, the Trinity corridor. And in the background here you see the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge. This is the bridge that has a 400-foot arch. We're building it right now. The end of August or the beginning of September this year, we'll see the arch go up. And just last weekend, the crane that we've had to bring in 2 cranes to the way they're going to build the arch on the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge, They put 2 cranes in. The cranes, it'll take 2 weeks to build the cranes. And they start stacking these enormous round, you've seen them. If any of you have been down on the site there at the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge site, you start building these big round cylinders and stacking them, and the cranes will hold them in place as they go up. And then we'll have a topping off of the arch, probably the 1st of September. I called Doug Pitcock yesterday, who owns Williams Brothers Construction. They're building the bridge. And he said late August, early September. So we'll have a big party when we top it off. And next year, in the summer or perhaps fall, depending on the rain, of course, and depending on our Italian welders, we have to keep those visas. You know, we've had terrible visa problems. You've read about those with our welders. So our welders who are here in town are teaching American welders how to weld these cylinders together. So depending on all these things, we will be opening the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge next fall in September, and we're planning a big party for that. So back to our images here, solar-powered taxis, solar-powered shade structures on the island, and this will flood periodically. Maybe every 5 years we'd have a large flood that would inundate the island and the lakes, and then the water goes down, recedes, we hose it all off and use it again. This is a promenade going back. Can I go back? That's all right. The promenade between the 2 bridges, the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge and the Margaret McDermott Bridge. A San Diego developer has purchased all the land behind, which is between Commerce and Reunion. And these are his images and his idea of what we can have down by the lakes between the 2 bridges. My imagination takes me to Millennium Park in Chicago, and with this kind of remarkable people, places, and activities that can take place on the lakes. A whitewater course. Now, how many of you can imagine whitewater in Dallas, Texas? And I'll tell you a quick story. Gary Lacey is from Boulder, Colorado, and he has built about 98% of all the whitewater courses in the United States. Whitewater kayaking is a big new sport for young people. And Gary got in on the ground floor, and I met him years ago. And in fact, my husband and I went down the Colorado River with Gary from Grand Junction to Moab, Utah. It took us about 4 days with Gary and his family. And we just fell in love with this guy, and so brought him to Dallas, and we did a conference down at City Hall. This was in 2000. What does the river want to be? Because in our planning for Dallas and for our river, we had forgotten that this river is there and that it was the source of Dallas. I've said many times the river is the soul of the city, and yet we moved our river after it flooded in 1908, and straightened the river. The Corps of Engineers straightened the river, and you don't ever straighten a river. You don't do that to a river any more than you straighten us and put us in a straitjacket, you know, and say, go live a wonderful life. You don't do that. So Gary Lacey came, and when I met him at Love Field, he had his backpack on his back and his blue jeans, and he said, now take me to the river. So I said, okay. Took him down to Sylvan, and this was before we even had a boat ramp. And he says, well, let's go down to the river. Let's go in the river. And he pulls out of his backpack this big inflatable kayak, pumps it up, whoop, and he has an expandable oar. And we have to slide down a muddy slope to get down to the Trinity River. And I ruined a pair of Armani pants. I've never forgotten it. And so we got in this kayak, and we're paddling along. He's in the back, of course, and about 10 minutes he said, wow, you have a great river here. He said, you have more flow in this Trinity than we have in Little Boulder Creek, and we had the kayaking championships last year. International. People came from all over the world to Boulder. He said, they'll come to Dallas if you give people access to your river. So he told that story the next day at City Hall in the council chambers, and everyone was a little slack-jawed. You know, they had never even imagined. No one thinks about the river in Dallas. We've lived a century here now without the river, thinking about the river. But making the river a place that we could enjoy, actually, and use for recreation, this had not really gone on in the imagination of the planners. You know, we'll put roads down there in that corridor. We use it for a lot of environmental quality and flood control, but recreation, that's a different deal. So we've spent the last 8 years thinking about how to make the Trinity River a source of recreation, a park, a place to come, a place where we can come together as a community, where we can just be people together. You know, the thing, I imagine each one of you knows this. Where do you go? Where do you go when you really want to just work it out and come up with a new idea? Well, it's usually something in nature, and most of the time it has water in it. And I've studied a lot about water. I've written about water. I have a book that I'm almost ready to publish on water, because I believe that water, in a way, water is consciousness. You know, we're 98% water when we're born, and 75%, I think, when we die, and the brain is the same constituency, and Mother Earth is the same constituency of water as our body, and everything works on water. You know, crystal is frozen water, and crystals control our computers and send shuttles to the moon and so on. So what is this consciousness that we call water? And water gives us imagination. So to sit by water and reflect, can you imagine 10 years from now, going from your office in downtown Dallas down by the lake and just sitting for a while and then going back to your office? Got that one solved. I know what to do next. So this is a whitewater course in downtown Dallas, and it's in a reverse flow lake. The river goes one way, goes down to Lake Livingston, goes to Houston. We're reversing the flow right after it passes downtown so that it comes back, fills up our lakes, and goes down the whitewater course. Then you get back on the lake and you do a 4.5-mile loop in your kayak or your canoe. This is a Google map of the Trinity River, and Dallas is up there at the top somewhere. And our artist who's working on the project took that image and just created something fun to show. This just gives you some of the ideas that we have planned. An amphitheater on the lake with a floating stage. This one's at Swarthmore College. We took that as a prototype. And the isthmus that connects the two lakes. And you have a little whitewater course here for the ambitious, and a cheater's course in a canoe that allows you to slip on through without much contest. These images give you some sense. Here's a kayaker going down through the connection, and that's the Margaret McDermott Bridge in the background. It is a 300-foot arched Santiago Calatrava Bridge, and we'll start that one in about 2.5 years. We're working now with TxDOT, Texas Department of Transportation. So much has to be worked out to build the Margaret McDermott Bridge because of all of the approaches that go in. That's the I-30 bridge that goes down to Austin. And all of the approaches have to be changed on this bridge. This shows once again the promenade between the two bridges, and we're building a rowing course. Do any of you row? Are there, crews here? Some of you do, I can tell. This will be an Olympic course in the western part of the corridor, and Then next to it is a very large amphitheater area that will seat 20,000 people. And these 20,000 people could gather for maybe 4th of July or other kinds of festivals. And maybe when your convention gets big enough, that's where you'll go. Right, Sean? Okay. So I can't imagine what would happen to Dallas if we had 20,000 entrepreneurs just like you know, be burgeoning. So what have we done? We've already built the Audubon Center, which was designed by Antoine Predock, a Pritzker Prize-winning architect, and it is simply beautiful. We were out there this week. The Trinity Trust hosted an event called Horses and Helicopters. We're trying to raise funds now for the horse park that will go in next to the Audubon Center. And we took folks, possible donors, up in a helicopter and showed them the site of the horse park. Oh, people were just blown away by it. It was so much fun. But it's a delight. Now, we're building this summer the standing wave. There are 2 standing waves. Both of these were designed by the fellow I mentioned a little while ago, Gary Lacey. And this is under the Dart line, where the Dart line goes over the Trinity River, just south of Corinth, which is on the south end of our city, and by the old trestle bridge. This will be a pedestrian jogging bridge, and you'll be able to get off of the jogging bridge and go down into this area. And that will happen this summer. That's my granddaughter. So, but that just shows the fun of kayaking and how delightful it is. The Continental Bridge will be converted to a pedestrian bridge when we open the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge. So when this bridge goes up, this bridge now, Continental, will become pedestrian. Right now we don't have any way, really, certainly not a pleasant way, to go from one side of our river to the other. And I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to know Santiago Calatrava. This man's a real prince. He is an architect, he's an engineer, he's a poet. I was just telling Sean, whose daughter's name is it okay for me to say, is Sophia? And I said, oh, Santiago Calatrava's daughter is named Sophia. And they have 3 sons, and their sons are named Gabriel, Michael, and Raphael. And I said, everything about Santiago and everything he does has that kind of lift and spiritual quality, like wings. And it's just that's where his imagination goes. He's a magnificent human being and a delight to work with. The steel came in last summer. It was manufactured at Cimolai factory in Italy and was trucked up here from Houston. And you've seen it now. Actually, my husband in his Strasburger offices says he keeps his binoculars up there, and he looks down every day. He calls me and says, Gail, nobody's working today. What? Do something. So and he's in that tall building. Now, what we're doing right now, we're building trails in the Great Trinity Forest because we're having to wait on the Corps of Engineers to get their act together, and they're doing an environmental impact study that has to go through all the things that Corps of Engineers projects go through. So while we're waiting on that study, we're building trails in the Great Trinity Forest. These are actual images from our forest. Most of us have no idea that we have this treasure. And think about, 20 years from now, think about Golden Gate Park. I mean, no telling what this place can be for us. We have to go, we have to get started, we have to give ourselves access to it because we have no access now. So we're building this trail, and we're building a trail that will go from White Rock Lake. Here's White Rock. Some of you may jog around White Rock now. If you do, you're telling us, and you're telling the folks in the Park and Rec Department at City Hall, that it's too crowded, that too many people, and the bicyclers and the joggers all bump into each other. Well, we're creating a reliever route to go down through the Great Trinity Forest, and it will end up at the Audubon Center, and it will go right next to the horse park. So opening up this Trinity Forest that's 6,000 acres gives, just think of the possibilities here. When we went to the Audubon on Wednesday for our event, we passed by many, many new condominiums and houses. Oh, I'm out of time. I'm so sorry. You gave George Bush an hour last night, and you told me I had to do this in 20 minutes. Okay, I'll keep going. Here's the Texas Horse Park. Well, I just have about 3 more things to show you, and I'll be finished. Texas Horse Park is 600 acres, and just look at, this is in the center of our city. I called Mary Soom after I was out for a trail ride. We took Kay Bailey Hutchinson out with her children. And I called Mary and I said, Mary, we have a ranch in the middle of our city. This is just too good to be true. So there's Kay on her horse. So there we go. This is the end of the slide. And you see, here we are in downtown Dallas, and here we are right here. You go down the Woodall Rogers, and there's our Trinity River and our new Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge. And that's it. Thank you.